flat panel computer screens. It's an area of technical competition where the Defense Department plans to spend $500 million to help the American manufacturers get the jump on the Japanese and other foreign competitors. Spencer Michaels reports.
Quality is great, just a lot of disturbance here in the store. A lot of electronics.
The clerks at your neighborhood consumer electronics store are touting the latest in thin screens, otherwise known as flat panel displays. Those displays are being used in a variety of electronic game machines and small televisions.
It's very easy to use, very lightweight.
They provide the viewing screens on small video recorders. The displays are all imported, mostly from Japan, because there is virtually no American flat panel display manufacturing industry. The exploding market for notebook or laptop computers has been made possible by thin screens, helping make flat panel displays a $5 billion a year industry now that is expected to grow to $20 to $40 billion by the year 2000.
Just click here to make it work.
That phenomenal growth will come, industry experts say, because flat screens like this will eventually surround us. They will probably replace the conventional picture tubes that make television sets and desktop computers so fat and bulky. 95% of all the flat panel displays in the world are manufactured in Japanese factories, even though the technology was invented in the U.S. Apple Computer uses Japanese screens in its fast-selling laptop computers. The screens cost $1,000 to $1,500 each, the most expensive element in the laptop. Tom Cradell is an Apple engineer.
We've sold over 1 million of these LCD screens in the past 2 years and expect our business to grow. We'd like to have manufacturing sites near our factories. It's important in our business for quick time to market.
The problem has been that while Americans have excelled at research and development, they originally underestimated the potential for flat screens. So they failed early on to invest in manufacturing technology and factories.
7's rolling in on the road. I see the vehicles.
The lack of a domestic supply worries the Pentagon. Even though it uses only 5% of the total output, the Defense Department wants some flat panel displays made in America because they're increasingly vital to modern warfare. The information that pilots or tank commanders rely on to find their way or their target appears on thin screens in the cockpit or in their helmets.
Our recent experience in Desert Storm dramatized the fact that the battlefield of the future is going to be a battlefield in which a torrent of data is pouring in on the individual combatant.
Kenneth Flam is an economist at the Department of Defense.
The individual combatant is going to be required to interface with this huge stream of data pouring in on him. And the key point of interface between the combatant and that data is going to be the display.
Flam, a Clinton appointee, developed the Pentagon's recently announced flat panel display strategy. Its aim is to start a manufacturing industry in this country that can reliably supply the military. Defense will provide more than $500 million for advanced research, provided that the recipient commits to build American flat panel display factories.
Defense is going to step up to the plate and say, if you're willing to commit, we are going to be willing to provide research and development, match your investment in research and development in this area into the future.
Silicon Video Corporation, a startup company with backing from some industry heavies, intends to enter the competition for government money. It hopes to mass produce thin screens in the United States by 1997. Chairman and CEO Harry Marshall.
What the government is doing is allowing us to accelerate that concurrent engineering, to get into these manufacturing facilities that are not cheap earlier. And hopefully that takes a lot of the risk out of the project, but also gets product out a lot sooner. This company will invest, and its partners will invest $2 for every one that would come from the government.
Marshall has laid out on the walls of his headquarters the nearly 500 steps necessary to begin large-scale manufacturing. It's a complicated, capital-intensive path.
The Japanese spend, depending on who you believe, somewhere between $600 million and $1 billion on a facility that will process 1 million units per year.
Silicon Video is developing a flat panel display technology based on conventional television engineering, using a compressed version of the familiar cathode ray tube. That is one of many technologies that will be competing for government funds. The giant Xerox Corporation also intends to apply for federal support using a different flat panel technology, sophisticated liquid crystal displays.
That looks good. Is that the next one? Is that a color?
That's a color.
Malcolm Thompson directs the Electronics and Imaging Laboratory at Xerox in Palo Alto. Using some federal grant money, his team has developed, but not mass-produced, what he calls revolutionary improvements in flat screens. Xerox is turning the screen itself into a computer, using tiny points of light as on-off switches.
What we've had to do is to radically transform and improve the technology from where it is, or it was 3 or 4 years ago. We take pieces of glass, and we had to make 6 million transistors on that piece of glass. We've created a screen which has the resolution of a piece of paper. In fact, people like to look at it, they want to look at it, and of course it's an electronic image.
Xerox has invented a flat screen that can serve as an electronic slide, projecting extremely clear pictures fed from a computer.
Imagine this being in your automobile, giving you all the information that you now have on the dashboard. It'll be in aircraft, in cockpits, it'll be in your home, it'll be in your office.
As exciting as that appears, critics warn that subsidies to support high tech are potentially dangerous. They force the government to choose what will work from competing technologies.
Government has put itself in the position of picking the winner before the research is done.
On the Stanford University campus in the heart of Silicon Valley, economics professor Roger Knoll sees big problems when the government tries to pick the best technology. He points to the recently canceled Super Collider as an example of how government can overcommit to very expensive technology.
It can become a waste of money. Federal R&D commercialization projects have a tendency to last longer than they should. When they're failures, the government will have a hard time pulling out because there'll be a multi-billion-dollar industry with thousands or hundreds of thousands of employees whose job depends upon the continuation of the program. And that will likely cause the program to survive longer than it would if the decision were based on a business decision of is it worth it.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle.
The U.S. has been subsidizing selected industries for decades. The Space Shuttle wouldn't have gotten off the ground without profit-making firms using taxpayer money. And the semiconductor business was in the doldrums until the federal government began subsidizing an industry-wide research consortium called Semitech. Such federal involvement in industry is often called industrial policy, a term policymakers like the Defense Department's Ken Flam usually avoid as alien to America's free market economy.
They throw industrial policy around when there's all these illegitimate activities they'd like to throw you into the same bucket with, okay? We don't want to be in that bucket. We want to be in the technology bucket because there's a legitimate, strong argument for a role of government in technology.
However, American firms in the flat panel display industry have to consider whether the Japanese have too large a lead for the U.S. to break into the market. Photon Dynamics is an American firm that makes testing and repair equipment used by Japanese, Korean, and Taiwanese companies in the fabrication of flat screens. CEO Francois Henley is an industry insider.
And just like any new industry, there is room for people coming in even after the early innovators in manufacturing have started producing panels.
We're going to jump on a second and third generation technology, rather like the Japanese did with the integrated circuit business when they jumped on at a later phase than us.
Xerox's Malcolm Thompson claims the time is right now.
If the United States wants to basically survive in the computer business, it better take an intense interest in the screen business, because that will be the computer of the future.
A few specialized American-made flat panel displays are already on the market, including monitors for vital signs used in ambulances and hospitals. Meanwhile, the Defense Department will begin accepting proposals in the fall from risk-taking companies who will try to mass-produce high-quality thin screens in America cheaply enough to compete with the Japanese.
Finally tonight,
the U.S. ambassador to Nigeria, and the possibility of life in outer space. Next, technology's winners and losers. This week, Apple Computer, one of the giants of American technology, announced large losses and a painful reorganization. The story is far from over, but it does provide reason to wonder why some inventions like Apple's Macintosh have trouble in the marketplace. Business correspondent Paul Salman of WGBH Boston does our wondering.
In the event you've been on Mars for the past few months, Microsoft, the Tyrannosaurus Rex of computer software, has successfully launched Windows 95. One goal of the new program is to make the IBM-type computers it runs, so-called PCs, easier to operate. Microsoft's other goal? To bury rival systems, most notably the one that runs the Apple Macintosh.
Hey, you want to see some dinosaurs?
Yeah, dinosaurs.
Loading a DOS CD into Windows 95.
Where's the dinosaurs, Dad?
I'm not sure. Restart and save.
Apple has counter-advertised, touting the legendary user-friendliness of its Macintosh with its Mac operating system.
If you're looking for a computer that's easy to use,
Where you going, kiddo?
To the Crandalls. They have a Mac.
there's still only one way to go.
Actually, there's not only one way to go in computer operating systems, at least not yet, and Apple's lucky there isn't. For if there were, the one way would probably be PCs like the IBM running on Microsoft Windows, not the Mac, despite the fact that the Mac technology has widely been considered superior to Microsoft's for a decade.
QuickTime VR is a brand new technology that we brought out about a year ago, which allows us to capture environments like this with a standard 35mm camera, bring those images into the computer, and have our computer stitch the images together. And you get a 360-degree panoramic scene.
Apple's struggle to compete with Microsoft-driven PCs may seem like inside baseball for businessmen, but it actually provides a key insight for understanding the world of technology around us.
Among the most famous quotes in business history is Ralph Waldo Emerson's. If a man make a better mousetrap than his neighbor, though he build his house in the woods, the world will make a beaten path to his door. In fact, there are better mousetraps than this one, the ultrasonic pest repeller, for example, yet this remains the standard. Similarly, the Apple Macintosh may be the better mousetrap in computing, yet the world has beaten the path to the IBM PC and Microsoft. The question is, why? Well, one useful answer is an idea known as path dependence. That is, once enough people follow a particular path in technology, that path becomes the standard one on which future technology and products depend.
Consider keyboard technology. Using the same text and equally skilled typists, it was demonstrated back on a silent film in the 1930s that you could type 165 words a minute with the keyboard on the right versus 131 on the left. And which is the one we all use? The apparently slower, older one on the left. The Dvorak system on the right claims to demand less of the left hand, less row-to-row finger hopping, no irksome pinky stretches. The arrangement of the letters seems to be more efficient, but almost no one uses it.
Dvorak in the 1930s did a whole host of human factor studies and made a keyboard that was far superior. Too late. Once you have an installed base, once you have tens of millions of people using the typewriter, it's too expensive to change. And for a small improvement in learning and typing speed, it is not worth it.
Don Norman, a longtime psychology professor, is trying to forge new paths for Apple, making its technology ever easier for the consumer. As for Emerson's quote about the better mousetrap, he's blunt.
Just not true.
And it's not true because?
Because Herbert Simon had invented this wonderful concept called satisficing. When something is satisfactory, you don't need to have perfection. And so if something is good enough and serves your needs, then people will buy it. And if people find others buying it, then they will buy it. And soon more and more people buy it. And then soon if somebody comes out with a better thing, like the Dvorak keyboard, well, but this one seems good enough. Why should I make an effort to switch?
It's arguably the same story with every technology, from the keyboard to the paperclip. which Henry Petrosky of Duke has studied.
What we want the paperclip to do is to sit there, preferably not crease the paper, preferably not leave any permanent marks in the paper, not rust. We'd like it not to come off accidentally, but of course we wanted it to hold tight while it was on the papers. We don't want it to tear the paper or rip the paper when it's coming off.
The standard gem clip falls short on each of these counts. Since its invention in the late 1800s, rust-proof, angular, ribbed, and butterfly clips have all challenged the flawed gem unsuccessfully.
People adapt to technologies that have limitations or have shortcomings. And after a while, we adapt so well that we don't notice their shortcomings.
Or for that matter, the computer. Apple was the first to come out with an easy-to-use graphic operating system. Click on an icon and voila, the machine responds. Microsoft did develop its own graphic operating system, Windows, for the IBM PC, but years late and a few features short. So why does the well-beaten path now lead to PCs with Windows and not Macs with the Apple operating system? Partly, it's Apple's own fault. When Apple launched the Mac with its famous 1984 TV ad, it made what is now seen as a strategic business blunder, refusing to license its graphic, user-friendly operating system to other manufacturers. By contrast, Microsoft, which owned the software system to run IBM PCs, licensed its technology to all comers. Today, 10 years later, Microsoft has some 85% of the market. As more software programs are written exclusively for Microsoft-driven PCs, it becomes more difficult for loyal Mac users to resist the IBM Microsoft path. Software designer Richard Anders.
Normally, if you're a developer and you look at the numbers and you see that Apple, depending on the market, has anywhere from 10 to maybe on the high end in educational markets or something like that, 20 or 30%. When you look at those numbers, you start to think, these are very grim. If I'm going to develop software, I want to be, like Willie Sutton said, where the money is. And the money is on the PC side where everybody else is.
If you go into a computer store today, says Anders, there are 7 aisles of PC software written for Windows for every aisle of software written for the Mac.
Oh, the things people do to decide between 2 TV shows they want to watch.
Now, there's a recent precedent for the Microsoft Macintosh battle in which the better mousetrap also didn't win. Sony Betamax versus VHS. Again, Apple's Don Norman.
Yes, Beta was superior to VHS, but there was a deadly marketing war going on where the other Japanese companies banded together to teach Sony a lesson, because Sony was being too arrogant in trying to retain all of the property rights for Beta.
Beta was better, but Matsushita, JVC, and the rest had the better strategy, teaming up to set a common standard, which induced more movies to be put onto VHS, more consumers to buy the machines to play the movies. You get the picture.
Microsoft has in effect done the same thing, promoted a sharing strategy to create an industry standard. And to be sure, it's also marketed like mad, throwing its weight around monopoly-like, some would say illegally, to keep the competition at bay. It's in this context that the new, improved Windows 95 is luring more consumers down the Microsoft path, while Apple, as it happens, has been stumbling with manufacturing delays, batteries catching on fire, key executives leaving, and talk of a failed merger with IBM.
Now, with newly reported losses, the company is actually planning significant layoffs. But, says Apple, all is not lost. The company is counting on loyalty to keep its current customers, innovation to attract new ones.
Let's talk about computer voice synthesis. We have a file.
Moreover, since Apple, unlike Microsoft, produces both the software and the hardware, the computers themselves, it says it can develop and build new ideas into its machines more quickly and cheaply than the competition.
My name is Bruce. I am generally considered to be one of the best voice synthesizers in the industry today.
Also, Apple's finally sharing, having licensed its operating system to other companies to make cheaper Apple clones. But perhaps Apple's best hope for the future is the Internet.
Hi, Larry.
That high-speed network of telephone cables and modems connecting millions of computers worldwide. From company headquarters in Cupertino, California, I'm using Apple QuickTime conferencing software to play tic-tac-toe on the Internet, with Larry Duffy at the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena over a satellite photo of Mars he just sent me.
You've beaten me. I'm overwhelmed.
Information sent on the internet all adheres to a common standard. It doesn't matter whether it's a Mac or PC at the end of the line. And that gives Apple executives like Don Norman hope.
We now suddenly have a way that makes it easy to move around the world, and it doesn't matter what computer you're using. And if we move that way, and the new internet is an example of how it happens, that it's a whole new game again, a completely new game, where the best products can compete and can win.
Well, Don Norman may be right, and then again he may not be. After all, future paths will depend on all sorts of things that haven't yet happened. But for the present, path dependence can explain a lot about how and why the world of technology around us has taken the shape it has, and why the better mousetrap doesn't necessarily prevail.
Now find the search file under Business. What's in it? Extraordinary and constant change. There's a new command key for every organization. Strike it, and what do you find? Files on 8 excellent companies. Coca-Cola, USAA, Rubbermaid, and 5 others who've achieved leading positions in their industries. The Excellence Files tell the stories of who these leaders are, how they manage success, and what it takes to be prepared for the future.
We're the Southwest team, that's what we are. No MVP, we're each a big star. It's fun to fly and it's fun to surf.
If you're looking for future excellence in business, this Southwest Airlines corporate video seems a strange place to begin. Behind it, however, is a winning culture which defies conventional thinking, led by a CEO whom many might dismiss as an eccentric.
My name is her Big Daddy-O. You all know me, I run the show. But without your help, there'd be no love on the ground below or in the air above. You're truly my source of strength and pride, and I sure am glad you're on my side.
But as the co-founder of the airline with the best profit and performance record in America, Herb Kelleher's unconventional leadership style seems worth considering.
Well, you know, a lot of people have asked me about my leadership style, quote, unquote. And I've often said that most people who are stylish would probably not refer to it as a style because I really don't have any leadership style except being myself.
Thank you. At Southwest Airlines, we have fun.
We feel at Southwest Airlines that we'd rather have a company bound by love than by fear.
Love is a word rarely heard in corporate boardrooms, but Kelleher's use of the term appears sincere.
And I think one of the best slogans we ever had was, we smile because we want to, not because we have to.
Also unusual is the company-wide determination to resist bureaucracy
Take our picture
and have fun.
and then send it to me.
As Colleen Barrett, one of the original employees and now an executive vice president, attests.
It's almost a sin in Herb Kelleher's eyes if you don't have fun when you work. Life's too short, you know.
Normally, continue wearing the mask until further advice.
Some years ago, a ramp agent wrote me a note, which I just loved. He said to me, Herb, I know what you're up to. You're making work fun, and home is work.
Well, I think it's so funny because corporate America sometimes says
It's not allowed here to have a good time, to have fun. And I actually, at one of my first companies I ever worked for, I was laughing very loudly in the hall, and my boss called me aside and said, "People will think you're unprofessional if you cackle in the hall." When I came here and I met everyone here and saw how much they laughed, I said, this is where I need to be because I can laugh here with reckless abandon. I love it.
Traditional CEOs might put products, or customers, or Wall Street first, not Kelleher.
We value our employees first. They're the most important. And if you treat them right, then they treat the customers right. And if you treat the customers right, then they keep coming back and the shareholders are happy. And so we give people the opportunity to be themselves.
Jet promises peanuts for everyone. Come aboard on adventure, exciting and new romance.
I mean, if you have a good sense of humor, use it. If you like to crack jokes, do it.
The love boat is going to be leaving.
Kelleher's unique culture is one key to the company's success.
And you're traveling with the baby?
Equally important is its focused business strategy. Short-haul direct flights, no meals, no frills, and low fares.
Light up the night. Southwest Airlines' new fun fares are so low. Want to see that again? Now you can fly just for the fun of it.
We said, hey, there's this whole market out there of people who would love to fly and fly for 45 minutes instead of driving for 6 hours if the costs were low enough, the service were good enough, and the frequencies were sufficient to offer them real convenience.
Notwithstanding its current achievements, the company's beginnings were difficult, which, as Kelleher and Barrett relate, helped forge the culture and strategic success.
Our competition was mean to us in our early days. It was kind of like being abused and mistreated when you're still in the bassinet. They tried to keep us from getting into business through litigation for 3.5 years, and then they tried to put us out of business thereafter.
And in a way, that intense competition helped create our very culture. Because the more that people fought us, and the more that they took us on and sort of, you know, the big bullies, it was a classic David and Goliath story, the more our employees just banded together and they really became warriors.
Desperate to survive, Southwest used speed as its weapon.
In the very early days of Southwest Airlines, we were literally running out of money, and we had to sell an airplane in order to get some cash. And we decided that we couldn't afford to cut back on our schedules.
So we decided to operate the same schedule with 3 airplanes instead of 4, which meant you had to turn them more rapidly at the jetway.
So we actually went to the employees and said, this is a challenge that we are throwing out to you. This is the only way we can continue to operate the same schedule that we have been operating, and this has got to operate like a, you know, a smooth machine.
Overcoming that early challenge led to Southwest's famous 20-minute turnaround, a profit-building performing art.
I think it does have a balletic quality to it, and as a Southwest Airlines airplane taxis into the gate, look out the window and see what's happening. People aren't sitting there reading the newspaper, you know, waiting for the plane to snug up to the jetway. You can see the provisioning trucks coming. You can see the belt loaders coming to unload the baggage. In other words, there is a lot of closely choreographed activity occurring on that ramp before the airplane ever arrives. So when the airplane arrives at the jetway, everybody's ready. They leap into action. They're taking the baggage off. They're refueling the airplane as soon as it stops.
Coordinated chaos. That's right, coordinated chaos. Exactly.
They're provisioning the galleys. Lickety-split. It's like watching, I love to watch the provisioners. It's like magic fingers, you know, just boom, 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 boom. And it's teamwork in action.
You basically have people just pitching in and helping each other out to get that plane in and out as quick as you can, because the plane doesn't make money sitting on the ground.
It finally struck me that very few people are willing to pay you for sitting on an airplane at the jetway, and that basically people pay you to fly them instead of to sit them someplace.
The way we look at it, the quicker you're in the air, the quicker you get where you're going. Kelleher here.
You're gonna love our Southwest spirit.
Kelleher and Barrett have leveraged their competitive spirit and the 20-minute turnaround into a winning formula. As measured by the Federal Department of Transportation, Southwest has the best on-time record, as well as the fewest customer complaints or lost baggage claims for 5 years running, an accomplishment they call the Triple Crown. A festive celebration allows the company to honor both its culture and this achievement simultaneously.
The record of customer service that our superb people have achieved is unprecedented and unmatched in the world's airline industry. It is the equivalent of winning 5 consecutive World Series or 5 consecutive Super Bowls.
Sometimes people get misconception in terms of work. Our employees work very, very hard, and they're very proud of that.
Another on time.
Everybody seems to think that Southwest Airlines is a non-union airline, which is absolutely not true. We're probably the most heavily unionized carrier in the United States of America, and have been for a long, long time. But we've had union leaders that understand that in order to provide perfect job security, which we have, in order to provide increases in pay each year, in order to provide increased benefits on an ongoing basis, in order to enhance your profit sharing, you need to look into the future. You can't be too, short-term in your perspective on things because your future might be truncated as a consequence of it.
Southwest Airlines is only as good as its people, and we probably spend a disproportionate amount of our time from most companies concentrating on people.
The simulator is a 737 which contains just about everything that an actual 737 that you'll be working on contains.
It is difficult to keep your employees motivated 7 days a week, but I think that at Southwest we do a really excellent job of hiring to begin with. I mean, that's the key.
Good morning! Good morning! Great, thank you, and welcome to Southwest Airlines. Y'all fired up? Yes! And you should be. You should be. Let me tell you what you guys were up against to get here.
We receive an unbelievable amount of applications every year, about 140 to 150,000 applications. We interview about 30 to 40,000 people for about 4,000 to 5,000 jobs. Our challenge is to cull through all of the applicants and find the right person that has the right style to fit into our culture.
So clearly we select the cream of the crop. And Southwest Airlines also, on a regular basis, celebrates the people.
Happy birthday to you.
And clearly attributes to the success of our organization to the people that work here. It also is a celebration for Southwest Airlines that we have 40-plus highly motivated, excited, enthusiastic, spirited people that just came and joined our workforce. We're proud to have you guys as part of the team.
Excellent companies, including Southwest, are using strategic training and hiring to create cultures that yield rare levels of employee satisfaction.
Most fun I've had at a job since I've ever been employed.
I like the fact that there is that kind of oneness. And I know people say it can be cultish and all that, and we hear all that, and that's all good and fine. We'll take that, we'll accept that. But the bottom line is, anybody who's here longer than 5 minutes wants to work here. There's a reason that we were voted one of the top 10 companies to work for, because once you're here, no one in their right mind would want to leave. You got the casual wear, you got the fun, you got a place that is making money, that's profitable. What more is there?
And that has to be because of Herb and Colleen. They're the ones that are directly over this huge thing that keeps growing and changing, and it remains.
Because of the unique styles of Herb Kelleher and Colleen Barrett, the question lingers, can Southwest and its culture continue to thrive after these two leaders retire?
The question that irritates me the most is when I'm asked, what will happen to Southwest after Herb Kelleher or after Colleen Barrett?
I don't think about that. I don't like to think about that.
Really, none of us
Herb's going to
like
live
to think
forever.
But I think it's in place. I mean, I feel real strong about it. I think they've instilled it, yeah.
In the vice presidents and the directors who will continue to be over people like us or the flight attendants or whatever.
No company is one person or two. You know, there's 150 Colleens, and, you know, there's probably 50 Herbs, and it's really those personalities and what they stand for are throughout the organization at every level.
Smokin' Herb Kelleher!
In typical Kelleher style, he steps into the ring to settle a trademark dispute with the CEO of a competing airline. Only time will tell how important the founders are in the overall scheme of things.
When I have a timeout, I need to go to the bathroom.
But there can be little doubt that thousands of organizations might benefit from a Kelleher-like commitment to the intangibles, fun, mission, and respect that appear to make the difference between a Triple Crown winner and the also-rans.
Pull Herb, pull! Pull Kurt! Both of you, pull! Kelleher's coming back! Kelleher's coming back! Kurt's got him in stalemate! They're both pulling like crazy! House of Pain! 3, 2, 3! House of Pain! 3, 2, 3! House of Pain!
The armed forces buy and distribute almost 3 million pairs of boots and shoes every year. Add to that millions of pants and huge amounts of other supplies, food, beverages, clothing.
Now draw. Now draw. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. All right, hit it, go.
Although quantities varied between peacetime and conflict, the basic military procurement system had remained unchanged since the Civil War.
Government procurement, I think, has been characterized by arm's length transactions, awarding to low bidders and receiving marginal service. And that's been going on in a procurement process that has remained relatively unchanged since 1860.
The procurement process worked like this. Supplies were ordered by agencies such as the Defense Personnel Support Center, DPSC, in South Philadelphia, and were shipped to huge storage depots. Military bases then requisitioned what they needed. The system seemed to make sense. It just didn't always work.
The customer had become accustomed to fairly bland government spec items arriving willy-nilly, sort of being spewed out of the depot system in very unpredictable fashions. And we really had a huge system, worldwide system of depots filled with things, many of which the customers never ordered.
By the late 1980s, government downsizing and press criticism of waste combined to pressure this century-old system to change. Rather than resist, DPSC decided to find a better way. Director of Contracting Bob Molino and members of his team, including May DeVincentis, led the charge.
I don't think that you wake up one Monday morning and say, I'm going to go in and re-engineer this entire business practice. I don't think that's how it happens. I think we start off with more realistic pieces of it.
I'd like to take some of that staff work off your shoulders if we can.
That'd be great.
Okay?
I'd be more than willing to give it up,
Oh,
too.
good. All right. Well,
Bob Molino introduced wild concepts like look at it before you buy it. Don't always buy the cheapest thing. It may not be exactly what the customer wants. What he was really telling us was, I'm going to set you free from having to be a bureaucrat.
Sound business practice and basic common sense had been stifled by bureaucratic rules.
We very much became somehow enamored of them, and we wrote more rules to support the rules that existed.
The rule that created most of the problems required detailed written specifications for every item the government ordered. Originally meant to ensure quality, the result was often the opposite: lower quality and a cumbersome system for both outside suppliers and the military. Dennis Dudek, who buys over $1 billion of clothing annually for DPSC, helped change the process.
We do a very large amount of business in underwear, as you can imagine. And in the past, we would have underwear companies, some of the largest companies in the country, making underwear according to how we told them to make it. And the product would come out looking something like this in a plain bag, made to a government specification, and not an extraordinarily good garment. We decided to go out and let industry do what they do best, make the garment they already make. And we contacted some of the top companies in the country and got them to come in for our product. And now, the kind of garment that you now see being provided to our soldiers is a brand name product, made the way industry makes a product with very little change to exactly what they do in private industry.
When you see a name and you recognize it, I think that makes you feel a little bit more comfortable. You're more comfortable with the quality because you're familiar with that quality.
I'm saving about 25 cents an undershirt when I have it made. Let industry do what they do best. 25 cents an undershirt, you may say, what's the big deal? That amounts to about $2 to $3 million in savings a year.
Small regular is the size.
Duplicate the underwear story with dozens of other items, and the result is improved quality, happier customers, and hundreds of millions in annual savings for the American taxpayer.
Another example of that same idea is a very simple item, for example, a sock. This is our boot sock. It's worn by every soldier. This sock cost us about $1.99 when we told the sock company how to make it for us. When we let the sock company design the sock, design the package, and tell us what should go into a sock, we were able to reduce the price 50 cents a pair. 50 cents a pair, big deal. Big deal is 4 to 6 million pair of socks. That's a substantial savings.
The next step for DPSC was a streamlined delivery process. That meant bypassing the depots and allowing shipments directly to military bases.
We've been supply chain managers for a long time. It's just that we manage supplies as opposed to suppliers. We're changing the way we do business.
To talk about changing your relationships with vendors sounds simple, but it really is a radical departure from how we did it before.
Instead of shipping to the depots, vendors, including Labatt Food Service in San Antonio, began making direct deliveries to Lackland Air Force Base. Labatt's Al Silva describes a better outcome now that he is in contact with the customer.
In the past, they always had cans, like the cans you buy at home for coffee. You can imagine how many cans you have to open to make coffee for 20,000 troops. So we come in and we say, why? Why are you doing this? Why don't you do what everybody else does that's feeding a lot of people, like in restaurants or hotels? Why don't you buy a filter pack, put in the equipment, have instant fresh ground coffee immediately, and you could save money. Just the packaging cost alone that you would defray would be unbelievable. So we did, and they were ecstatic. They were able to get coffee out there quicker, faster. Everybody was drinking it. And then, of course, they asked us afterwards. They said, well, we have a slight problem. I said, what, the coffee's bad? What? And they said, no, it's wonderful coffee, and the troops love it. But when we go out to the field, we always use the cans for ashtrays. So what are we going to do for ashtrays now? And I said, well, we'll sell you ashtrays.
Is the new approach effective? Mess hall personnel at Lackland think so.
That's one thing that I like is we get what we want versus what they tell us we have to have. And if we don't like what they give us, we tell them we don't want it anymore.
We used to get, like the ground beef, it have a lot of fat in it. Now it have a lot of, like lean. All these years I've been here, almost been here 20 years, and I never seen food so good.
Good food? Never a unanimous opinion on the part of soldiers, but apparently much improved by the changes at DPSC. How did this change happen? It began with committed leadership at the top.
You have to earn the trust and respect of your people, that they're confident that you know what you're doing, and that you're going to support them as you move along this evolutionary path that you're going to take. And it is an evolution. The changes are radical, but the process has to be evolutionary in terms of building trust as you move and try to change the entire culture of the organization that you're working with.
In order to support innovation in any organization, you've got to empower the people. And one of the things I've been able to do is find leaders who are willing to go out and do what's best for the organization. They've taken on the mission, they've taken on the responsibility, they've gotten the resources, and they produce results.
I think people who haven't been here, say, for the last 5, 6, or 7 years see what I would call entrepreneurs at work. And I think that's a radically different environment from the one that I came into in 1986, where we had government servants doing their government jobs and in a very kind of government way.
Okay, let's get the show on the road here. As you know, we go before the board of directors in about 3 hours. One of the things about reinventing the way government does business is even having a board of directors where the top managers in our company sit around and approve or disapprove of ideas.
Dennis and his team are preparing to recommend changes that will make the transformation even more complete. The DPSC board must approve.
Vendor Park. Where are we going to go with Vendor Park? Bertie, as my leader on the project, tell me what you're going to do.
The goal is to make the manufacture and distribution of military clothing state-of-the-art, comparable to how major retailers operate.
What we're trying to do, we're trying to have just-in-time inventory stock on hand. We want just-in-time. We want it here when we need it. We don't want it here for 6 months that we don't need it. Much like what you see in the retail area, like the Walmarts, the Kmarts, things like that. We're starting to come online with that because you just can't afford, in the days of the budget cuts, you can't afford to have a bunch of stock tied up, sitting in a warehouse and not being utilized straight away.
And performance, Dennis and his Recruit Clothing team have a business case to present.
I appreciate the opportunity to address the board of directors and discuss a new program called Vendor Park. I know many of you
You've got to be willing to change, and it is not a revolution, it is an evolution, and change has got to become the vanguard of the organization as opposed to an event that takes place and you celebrate it and it's over.
Any other questions?
How much depot space will this free up, and what depots will be impacted by this?
Our goal is to bring
And I am always very, very fascinated when folks come in from private industry and they say, wow, you folks are very much like people on the outside. I'm really shocked. I thought this was the government. I really thought I was going to come in and find a bunch of drones, a bunch of bureaucrats. You people are way out in front. You're probably further out in front than some of the Fortune 500 companies.
Then can I say that we have a consensus that Dennis can move forward?
Yes, definitely. And we always talk about our government as being laden with bureaucracy and people and slow to move. Well, not this time.
Good job. Good job. Way to go, guys.
Has the government way changed everywhere? Certainly not. But is change happening on a greater scale than most people think? Probably yes.
Let's go. Take the right foot, Bryson.
And if other bureaucracies doubt their ability to change, then DPSC and its entrepreneurial spirit may be the right place to look for inspiration.
Aren't you glad you didn't quit? Good. Press on. There you go. Good job.
This is what we call Villa Pesquera. It's really a fishing village, and a lot of the poor community lives down here.
And basically what we're doing here is we're doing some trash collection, we're cleaning up the general area, and also if you can notice we're doing some planting of palm trees, plus we've asked the village people to clean out their yards, and we're going to do some major trash collection along the sidewalks. We have approximately about 30 employees working in this general area.
The people cleaning up this fishing village in Puerto Rico are not municipal employees. They work for a company headquartered 2,000 miles north in the woods of New Hampshire, where community involvement has become part of the core business strategy. Timberland is a fast-growing, family-run business that has emerged as a strong competitor in the footwear and clothing industry. The company attributes its success to the production of high-quality products, innovation in building the brand, and an organization-wide commitment to community involvement, an approach called Boot, Brand, and Belief. Chief Operating Officer Jeff Schwartz.
Boot, Brand, and Belief is not a slogan. It's actually a statement, a little bit about our past, a little bit about our present, and hopefully something about our future. Boot refers to product, the thing that's always been behind Timberland's assertion to the consumer. My grandfather made a boot, a real substantive thing you could hold in your hands and you could believe in it. And my dad's genius was to recognize that this boot was a permission from a consumer to do big things in terms of building a brand. Imagery, that meant clothing, and it means all sorts of exciting opportunities to build on the boot. Belief is both an internal and an external expression. Belief about what you do and why you do it, but belief also about the product and about the brand. An uncompromising assertion of the consumer that says, this boot won't disappoint you, neither will this company. And it's also supposed to be an internal assertion that says, this company won't disappoint you if you're an employee. And it's supposed to be an assertion to the community that says, we won't disappoint you either. We are actively committed to the standard of boot in the context of brand, and that's belief.
The depth of Timberland's commitment to community is unusual by corporate standards, but not unique. Increasingly, companies are reaching out. Timberland began by developing links to City Year, sort of an urban Peace Corps.
How Timberland got involved in its community service program was influenced through our relationship with the City Year organization. City Year gets and teaches its young people about civic responsibility and citizenship.
And so they wrote us a letter that said, be philanthropic, we could use your help. You got more than you need, send us some boots.
We were surprised to find out that when they wanted to thank us for sponsoring them, they said, do what we do. And so we got involved in a community service project with them. Our employees were matched with their core members, and we experienced one-on-one the power of service.
From the island.
The good works achieved by the City Year Timberland teams were obvious in the neighborhoods of Boston. But how could this become a two-way street? How could Timberland get something back from City Year? Corps members were invited to New Hampshire to provide training in basic leadership and team-building skills, which helped the company maximize overall performance.
Well, good morning, everybody. I want to thank you all for asking us to do the Leadership Compass here.
City Year has brought us a lot of interesting ideas that are relevant for us as a business. One of those is the notion of leadership training.
The workshop we're about to do right now is the Leadership Compass. It's a diversity exercise that primarily focuses on our diversity of skills and work approaches.
City Year takes a diverse group of people. Anybody from somebody who's graduated from Harvard to a single-parent mother who didn't graduate from high school, and takes these young people and has them work together for a year. There are a lot of differences in that group, and they manage through this training to make each other understand what these differences are and build a stronger team. We found that very compelling to adapt into our own workplace.
We've done this workshop for a number of parts of the company, and ideally it will give you a way to refer to each other's styles in meetings. So for instance, you might say in a meeting after this workshop, oh, you're being so north, I need a little west here, or I need a little south.
Instead of paying outside consultants to teach us how to work together as teams, we've been led by young people in red jackets, idealists in action. They come to Timberland, and these young core members have shown us how a high-performing team works together. It'd be as good as anything you can get in the Fortune 500 in terms of training, because these are young people who believe passionately in what they're doing, and they have helped us work at the science of team building.
I think the toughest direction to work with is probably the north person, right?
Yeah. I think so.
But don't tell them we said that.
No, I know.
What's hard about being a northerner is we're often perceived as being very forceful, and we have an inclination to do things ourselves.
Part of the inspiration for me to to get up, pull my boots, and continue to try and make a difference at Timberland comes from the young people at City Year.
Inspired by its relationship with City Year, Timberland has struck out on its own with a company-wide program of community service, which Schwartz considers an investment.
What we do at Timberland is not philanthropy. I don't think that's the right model. We are investors. We invest in the people that work at Timberland. We invest in the products that we sell to consumers. We invest in the retail stores where we sell to consumers. We also invest in the communities that we live and work in.
Timberland has a policy of providing its employees 40 hours of paid leave time. That leave time is used in a number of ways, both for corporate plan projects as well as for employees to get involved in the community in their own individual way.
The individual investment that people make in their community is a cornerstone of corporate service at Timberland. It is relevant to me that senior managers at headquarters show up. It's equally relevant, maybe even in some sense more powerfully relevant, that in Puerto Rico we walk out of the factory and into the community that we live in, and we help transform that community through service.
At the factory in Isabela, Puerto Rico, 400 employees are preparing for a day of community service.
Pensada para ayudar. Bendice a todos los que toman parte en ella, que sea un día
We're here in Isabela, and this is Ernesta's Gavang's house. She's an old lady. She's senile at this moment, and she lives all by herself. She only has her brother, which his name is Roberto. And we decided, since we do service to the community, and she's in such need, and we figured this is the best project we can think of. And we're trying to redo her house in as little time as possible because we only have like 8 hours to do it in. So what we're doing is we knocked down the back of the house and we're putting it up now. And we're painting the front, and we did the lawn, which is, all this was like 6 feet of grass. And we knocked it all down. And now that's what we're working on.
We're repairing the home of Victor Martinez. He's a Timberland employee here in Puerto Rico, and his house was damaged in the last hurricane. And what we're trying to do is help him out rebuilding his home. Today you see about 15 or 20 employees, Timberland employees, helping him out paint the house, repair the roof, put up the windows, and do as much as possible during today.
Timberland considers its commitment to community projects a business investment for the future. For excellent companies, the way to measure return on investment has expanded.
Creating value for the shareholder is a fundamental part of what we do. We are a business. But the usual financial models stop only at the shareholder, and they don't take into consideration the employee, don't take into consideration the consumer, really, and don't really take into consideration the community much at all. Balancing this equation isn't easy, and there are a couple of places, oftentimes at Timberland, we look to sort of represent those two extremes. And one is a quote that comes from Milton Friedman, and he talks about the corporations that give away money are stealing from the shareholder. That's one extreme. At the other extreme is a quote from Margaret Mead. It says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's all that ever has." And those two extremes kind of represent what we're trying to do with Timberland. There's some idealism there, and there's some recognition of the fact that we are a business, and we're trying to combine those two things.
I think it's great that Timberland does this with all these people. They pay them to come out and work. And we feel good about it because we're actually helping our community.
And we feel that Timberland cares for people out of the company. We do know they're caring for us too. And like I say, they're giving us the opportunity to help others. And we really enjoy it. At least us Puerto Rican, we enjoy it very much.
We think that if you invest in the community, internal community, you end up with the opportunity to get the whole human being at Timberland. You get the mind and the body and the soul, because you get, that's boot brand and belief, you get the whole package. And I believe the math is simple. A whole human beats a fraction of a human. The key to our competitive strategy is, at Timberland and in our community, we are working to create the environment where the whole human being can exist and participate.
Underlying the apparent tranquility of this Ohio landscape is a harsh, new competitive reality. The clash between industry giant Rubbermaid and a newcomer from Israel, ZAG, is symbolic of the challenges facing many businesses. In classic David and Goliath battles, small companies are attacking the once invincible old-timers and slashing away at their market share and profit margins. Known for its wide range of household products, Rubbermaid has become a fixture in homes across America. The company is legendary for innovation, introducing a new product every day. And for years, Wall Street and even the competition have been singing its praises.
Rubbermaid is an empire. It's a leader for everybody in the consumer products field in plastic.
Rubbermaid had been thriving at the top for decades. But recently, the impact of changes in the global economy, some controllable, some not, was felt everywhere.
Well, we've actually had a combination of both external as well as internal challenges. From an external view, they're pretty straightforward. It's the consolidation of our customer base, the retailers particularly.
At a time when giant retailers such as Kmart and Home Depot were demanding ever lower prices, Rubbermaid's responses were undercut by foreign competitors like ZAG.
Shalom.
Rubbermaid is a kind of a criterion for anybody in this industry. You're either closer to them or further away from them. What we're trying to do is to achieve a very difficult synthesis, but I think we're good at it. It's a synthesis of bringing out products which are at a quality comparable to or sometimes even greater than Rubbermaid's, and to do so at a moderate price, which comes in more or less, 10 to 20% under theirs in most cases.
But the retail and competitive challenges were only part of Rubbermaid's problem.
And then from an internal view, what has challenged us, of course, has been the explosive growth of the price of our raw material, our primary raw material, plastic resins, which in some cases more than doubled here in the last couple of years. Dealing with the complexity, this rate of change that we're talking about, has caused us to evolve towards business teams.
Now that's fit. Now these will stack nicely.
These are small, highly focused teams, normally of 5 managers, cross-functional in their makeup, that allow us, hopefully, to be as nimble and as entrepreneurial and as fast as our smallest competitor. All the while, this team can take advantage of all the resource base of this much larger organization.
Here in Ohio, John Singer and his hardware team are creating a new toolbox system for the global market.
Rich and I are in the midst of putting together a whole new color statement for hardware. Rich is really pushing me towards red. I'm waiting for the final research to come back in. Whatever the research tells us we'll do.
These very highly focused business teams are really the heart and soul for how we can create compelling competitive advantage.
This advantage is not so easily achieved. ZAG, only 5 years old and already at $50 million in sales, is gaining ground. They want a bigger piece of Rubbermaid's leading share in the toolbox market, meaning that Singer's team has to be as focused and aggressive as ZAG's, led by CEO Zvi Yamini.
ZAG, what we built here is kind of commando teams. We react very, very fast to our consumer needs.
Okay, so we're going to present this to B&Q in the UK.
Except the colors, the same colors that we have in the Home
they love
Depot.
the colors, but not all European customers do. Some of them still want the dark green red.
The dark green red.
And in Switzerland, they don't want this color at all. They said only dark blue and
At
red.
first glance, it would appear to be no contest, but it is. ZAG's toolboxes sit right beside Rubbermaid's at Home Depot, forcing Rubbermaid to develop new features to justify its slightly higher price and to be accepted in local markets.
I think those small parts organizers and drawers are more fit into Japanese market than the big toolboxes.
Right, and that's why,
yeah.
we're driving the smaller toolbox, the 16 inches, is really for the Japanese market. Yeah, because what we're seeing here in the U.S. and in Europe is the bigger sizes.
Yeah. What about Japan? The
They
same
like
design, just different size.
they prefer the small one as
as their choice.
So and the same sticker, the same explanations
Yeah,
on the product?
everything will be the same. We're trying to avoid languages, too many languages on the label. We want to show the customers by pictures.
But I just want to make sure we get the buy-in from the Japanese team that they'll support the program. We'll work with them and make sure they understand, and we'll do what it takes.
Singer needs to beat ZAG to the market. With model in hand, he is seeking the go-ahead from senior management, a process that used to take several months, now streamlined to just weeks.
So the numbers should be okay. We should be all right. So I'm going to pass out these handouts, which all of you have gotten already, going over the financials, the positioning in the marketplace, overview of the program.
Morning.
Good morning.
Guys.
How are you guys doing today?
Good.
We're going to take a few minutes of your time just to go over the Global Toolbox program we've been working on. We've got a quick handout for you. We've been in the toolbox market now for about 5 years and have been very successful. We were the first company that came out with a plastic toolbox back in the early 90s. Plastic has taken a market share position of 70% of the toolbox market from nothing in the early 90s. Most of that was driven by Rubbermaid. The pressure we're under is a lot of pressure from competitors coming through and taking just regular boxes and taking price down. We have some smaller competitors from overseas that are starting to innovate, and we want to make sure we stay ahead of them.
I think first and foremost we're perceived as very exciting new product developers. And that's not a simple thing in our industry because like many other industries, it was kind of sleepy for many years. And when we first started doing what we're doing, many people said to us, a rose is a rose and a toolbox is a toolbox. It's got a handle and a tray and it opens and closes, and what's all the noise about? We always come back to the point that what ZAG is doing is maximizing the features. In this case, the most blatant to the eye is, of course, the drop-ins in the front, and it gives it a unique accessibility to the people who want to use it. Also from the retailer's point of view, and they like this, they give us a lot of feedback on this, they like the fact that when you're walking by on the shelf, and of course you only have 5 seconds to catch the customer's eye, this puts that feature right out in front.
John, what are the added value features in this new toolbox that are going to cause the consumer to want this box over the existing products that are out there, that'll get the consumer to step up to this product?
What we've done is we've taken the lids of our toolboxes and added small parts organizers to them. Now these modules will be of equal size and can be used in several different products. So what you're going to end up with is a whole system, a whole section in a store that'll have Rubbermaid toolboxes with small parts organizations that snap into them. Then you'll have different size toolboxes, you'll have drawer organizers, you'll have power tool cases, and you'll be able to buy these modules independently.
Are you convinced that this product will expand the market and not just take away sales from the existing product line?
No question in my mind and the team's mind that this is the right way to go. We see a big opportunity out there that we're missing, and that is we're giving space away to other competitors. By doing this product, we're able to keep it a whole Rubbermaid section and really partner up with retailers, not only here but globally as well.
When this innovative toolbox hits the marketplace, we will steal shelf space away from our competition, not only in the U.S., but in Europe and also in Asia.
We try to keep the shelf space by bringing day by day, week by week, month by month, new products to the market.
We've got to stay closely bound to our product focus, to our customer service focus, to our innovative design, human engineering kind of focus, and that we mustn't get too wrapped up in the sort of corporate accessories that go up, that come with all of this stuff as you grow.
And we don't want people coming in taking market share away from us.
I think it's a good approach. Anybody on the OT have any other comments, concerns?
Looks good. Looks good.
Yeah, looks great.
Appreciate your support.
Keep it moving.
And we'll keep you up to date on the developments in the program.
Okay, thanks, John. Thanks, team.
Thanks, guys.
The speed and autonomy of Rubbermaid's teams are essential in the battle against ZAG and other new competitors who are here to stay.
One morning, my wife saw me laughing when I have been read the Fortune magazine, and it was mentioned that Forbes, the 10 most admired companies in the United States, it was number 1 was Rubbermaid, number 2 was Home Depot. She asked me, why are you laughing? I said, I'm really proud and smiling because we succeed to compete with number 1 and we sell to number 2.
Rubbermaid understands the challenge and is certain of its response.
Beating your competitors to the market with true innovation, I think, is what it's all about. In my estimation, it's pretty simple. Fast companies beat slow companies every day, and it really doesn't matter what size you are.
I want to show that we're ready and up and ready to ship in September.
The market really does reward those who get there first.
The sooner we can get it, the better. And 'cause then we can shake out the problems. If I can ship in August, it'd be great.
In every industry, the Davids and Goliaths are in a global battle for shelf space and customers. Rubbermaid's lesson for the companies under attack is to become more entrepreneurial, using speed and teamwork as key weapons.